Good afternoon and happy Palm Sunday. And now, why don't you make it even happier and ditch your smartphone? What a crazy idea! No, I'm serious. I can't. You can't? Why not? I need it. Ah, you need it. You need it. Well, in fact, some of you can certainly say that. Um, I have a friend who ditched it and got a light phone, which is actually a really nice dumb phone, but extremely overpriced, but really nice looking. But then for his job, he had to re-get a smartphone, and so his whole experiment fell flat on its face. Unfortunately, because he doesn't want the smartphone, and he kind of begrudgingly just had to get one again. Those situations definitely exist. Some of us really can say that we can't get rid of the smartphone. And for them, there's a future video on how to minimize the damage of your smartphone if you have to have a smartphone. But I think that the majority of us who have a smartphone, I think that we could say in all truth, if we dig deep down into our inner being, um, we would admit that we don't really need it. And we'll talk more about that in future videos. Um, I think we can say, I think we can all agree, if we just look around ourselves, that the smartphone is one of the worst things to have ever been invented. Okay, we all know that it can be useful in some ways, but if you measure the pros and the cons, there's zero doubt, I think, if we look at it honestly, that the cons are way greater than the pros. So I want to talk about this in several videos. Um, for this one, I just wanted to touch on a couple of things in terms of the damage that the smartphone can do to us. I'm not even going to touch on the moral issues. Okay. Um, Maybe a future video, maybe not. But we all know that there are some gravely, seriously immoral things that we can access on our phones, and it can become completely addicting, especially with the ease that we can access it in our hand. But I'm not even going to touch that. All I want to touch today is two things. Two things that have to do with sort of the nature of the smartphone, such that almost all of us are going to fall prey to it. And those two things are, first, the smartphone's destruction of normal human communication and interaction, and two, the destruction on the natural level of thinking, and on the supernatural level, the practice of the presence of God. So we'll look at those two things. First of all, the destruction of normal human communication and interaction. So, from my own experience, I come from an Italian family on my mother's side. So, when I was young, we would go to Mass on Sunday, and then we go to Grandma and Grandpa's house. And going to Grandma and Grandpa's house, we would have our phenomenal Italian meal, and we'd all sit around the dinner table, and we'd have a great, great time. And this was in the late 90s, so this was before the smartphone ever came about. I don't think there was any smartphone at the time, and this was before we even had cell phones just all over the place. So what kind of interaction took place in a house like that? It's very easy to visualize. We don't have this distraction with us. And so what do? You're either talking or yelling, depending on whether you're Italian. You're talking, or you're listening, or you're just zoning out a little bit. And whatever one of those three things you're doing, you're eating lots of macaroni. Okay? So the result was, if you were talking, great. But if you were not talking, you didn't feel as if you had to occupy yourself with something else at the moment. You didn't feel this urge. You just calmly and sat there and listened. You just had a good time. So now, fast forward to the smartphone era. Put yourself in the exact same kind of situation. Let's say that we're even having a good conversation around the dinner table, but we all have our smartphones. What is the difference between this and what I just described before? Well, now, the second that no one's talking, or even if someone is talking, but let's just say the second no one's talking, suddenly you have this sensation, this urge. I can't stand the fact that nothing's happening at the moment. And so what do? I don't care what I check, but I check something. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's literally just, we've seen this before, I think. Someone pulls out the smartphone and just turns it on and then puts it back. Why? There wasn't anything really that important, most likely, that we're checking. So why are we checking it? Well, because if you have that temptation, this is the nature of the smartphone. The nature of the smartphone is to have you coming back to it over and over and over and over again. Just the fact that I know that something could be there, some notification, some message, something. There's something there. Just knowing that it could be there, it's almost impossible not to check it. And so imagine that, but such that you can't really avoid checking it. You have to check it consistently. And what's that going to do? It's going to destroy your ability to converse with people. Now, there are ways around this. You can put your smartphone somewhere else for a while. In fact, that's a practical resolution that I think we can take. If you're the host, let's say, of a dinner at your home, I suggest that, without being a jerk about it, without saying you must do this, just tell everyone, hey, we want to have a really good time. We want to chat. If you don't mind, do you mind if we just put all of our phones in one room? When you take someone's coat, if you live in not in Florida, sometimes people come with coats to your house, and so you take the coat and you put it all in one room. You put it all in one room. You go and you lay it on the bed. Why can't we do the same with maybe the smartphones? You can leave the notifications on. If there's some super emergency that happens, within this hour, you can leave the ringer on. But let's just put it aside, and so we can enjoy ourselves. I think that's actually something we could do, and then we can have that wonderful conversation at the dinner table again. So that's that. And then the second thing is the destruction of thinking and of the presence of God. So what do I mean by this? Well, human beings are rational animals. Okay, but they're not angels. So angels just know. They know. But we have to think things through. And so what makes us human is our ability, and this is what makes us different from the animals, our ability to make acts of the will, and our ability to rationalize, to think, to reason through things, to meditate. And so if we don't do that a good amount of the time of our existence, we are not really acting like humans. So this is the problem with, one of the problems with too much screen time, because the screen, I mean, if you have a book you're reading on the screen, that's one thing. But if you're checking news a lot, if you're watching movies a lot, you're watching TV shows a lot, you're just browsing the internet kind of haphazardly. The problem, one of the problems with that is simply that we're not exercising our thinking ability. We're just kind of, it's like an animal that sees lights, and we're just kind of being sensationalized by that and excited by that. But there's no real thinking going on. So to be able to think is one of the human elements about us. Now, to be able to think, we usually need time and attention. If you're going to unravel something, you're going to think about something, you want to dig deeper into something, you generally need some time set aside. You can't do it maybe in a minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. You might need 15 minutes, let's say, 20 minutes, half hour. And you need attention towards that. If we have the smartphone and we have it on us regularly, are we going to be able to do that? And I argue, generally, for the most part, no. Why not? Well, we go back to what the smartphone is. It's an addiction machine. Why? Because there could always be a new message, a new notification, a new like, a new whatever. And even if there's none of that, we still kind of just want to pull it out for no reason whatsoever. So there's always something that could be there that is on our mind constantly. So you imagine the situation where, okay, I'm going to spend 20 minutes now and think deeply about something, but I have my phone on me. Well, if I go back and just check my phone every few minutes, every 7 minutes, every 10 minutes, whatever, I've just taken my attention off of this deep subject, and now I've put it on this, and now I have to kind of restart. And not only that, but even before I check the phone, I have on my mind, I'm going to check the phone soon. And I wonder if this is on there or this is on there. And so even before you check it, your mind is still not really in a good state to think about this thing that you were planning to think about. And so it really destroys the ability to think. Now, for some people, if they're not addicted and they use it too much, but they're not addicted, okay, well, I'm not going to say it destroys thinking, but the point is that if you have it on you, and a lot of people have it on them all the time, almost all the time, we see this shallowing of our thinking in the last decade or two. We can't think anymore. We don't think anymore. And so, but that's the very precise reason that the smartphone really impedes our ability to think and to meditate. And then just lastly, on the presence of God, it's kind of the same idea. So we need to always have this understanding, this living idea of God. God is here. God is everywhere, and He is always there. And yet, if we have the smartphone on us, it's the same idea. If we are constantly checking it, or we are constantly thinking about it, what could be on my phone when I check it, that it's very hard, if not impossible, to live that simple, peaceful presence of God. And I think that's really damaging, especially for priests. And so anyone who has a smartphone, especially, I would say, priests, it has to be very under control. Otherwise, it can totally destroy the spiritual life. So that's it. that's it for now. I want to talk more about the smartphone in future videos. Um, I hope that eventually I do convince you to ditch it, because there really are alternatives that if we really want to, we could get rid of it. Again, with the exceptions I mentioned before, some people need it, but if you don't really need it, there's ways around it. So that's all. Thank you for watching. Once again, happy Holy Week.